Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Phillip Siddiq Show. I am, of course, your host, Phillip Siddiq. We have a documentary. It's more than just a documentary, The Waiting Room. And we are real fortunate to have this guy here. Much demand, legend, Peter Nix. What's up, man?
That.
You are, my friend. What's up? What's up? How you doing, my man?
How you doing?
I'm great. So give us a little bit about your background. We'll get into filmmaking because a lot of filmmakers also watch the show, too. So.
My background, basically, I came out here to the Bay Area out of Howard University in '97 to study documentary filmmaking. It's something, storytelling is something I've had a passion for a long time. I majored in English in college, and I got out of film school, and at the same time, my wife got her master's in speech pathology, and her first job was at Highland.
Whoa!
And that's how it all began.
Okay. UC Berkeley?
Yeah, for grad school.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah,
UC
the Berkeley Graduate School of Journalism.
Cool.
Which has a documentary film program.
Great. Now, you've made another documentary before, right?
Yeah, I've done a lot of television stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, why hospitals, Highland in particular? Because, of all the hospitals, why this one?
Well, partly because my wife works there, and so I had a pretty intimate view of the stories that, came out of a place like Highland.
The unbelievable stories?
Yeah, and one of the first stories that she told me was of this drummer, and he was from East Africa, and he was sort of a legendary drummer, kind of like the Bob Marley of drummers.
Yes.
And people come in to visit him, and they'd bring food, and they'd bring drums, and they'd break out into song. But this guy, he's a statistic. He's the uninsured, and I think that's as far as people saw him and other people like him. And I got to thinking, how many more people were there like this that were a statistic on a headline, but actually were three-dimensional people with stories to tell. And that was sort of the motivation, the driving reason why I wanted to tell the story of Highland.
Okay, now putting a project together, how long does it take you from beginning to end? Because I watched the film and I definitely enjoyed it, and I just was, how long did it take you to get clearances, and were the staff helpful to you in doing it?
Well, the access, basically the film The Waiting Room is the result of two different projects that kind of came together over a period of time.
Wow.
So Rob Epstein and Jeffrey Friedman, who directed Times of Harvey Milk and Common Threads, won Academy Awards for those films. They got the initial access to the hospital, and I heard that they were making this film, and I'd wanted to make this film for years, and so we partnered up, and I came on board as a producer. They fell away because another project got financed, and so I took over the project.
Right.
It started in 2007. And then it took a couple years to work out the access issues and all the financing and raise the funds. And then around 2010 is when we started shooting, and we shot for about on and off for about a year, and then the edit was another year, and then now we're distributing.
Okay, cameras. What type of cameras did you use?
Well, we used a very basic HD camera, an EX3, which is a pretty popular camera amongst indie filmmakers. It's not super expensive. It's very high quality. And then we added a 35 millimeter adapter to it to give it to allow for a shallow depth of field, so that the footage would have a little bit more of a feel of intimacy, but also because we're filming in a hospital waiting room, there's all kinds of privacy issues. We wanted to be able to
some of the
if we were focused on you, everybody else in the background is out of focus naturally, instead of us having to go back in and blur people out, which we didn't want to do.
Right. Very good. Now, what did you see in there? Did any of the, you heard the stories, but then you got to see them 360 degrees instead of just hearing them. Did anything shock you, or were you prepared? Or at times did you go, holy mackerel, let's take a break, let me wrap my head around this?
Well, one of the first things, two things really surprised me. One was the remarkable collection of caregivers there. The compassion and the skill of the caregivers there was remarkable, and the way that they approached their patients with respect and professionalism was actually surprising, because I think we have images in our heads about what a public hospital's like, and the bureaucracy of it, and the apathy of the caregivers, and they totally shattered that perception. And then the other thing was how the waiting room was being used for primary care. So people were using the waiting room as their doctor, basically. So people were flooding the waiting room, not because of emergencies necessarily, but because they were there because they had no doctor, and that was their only way to get care. And so that tension between the ER being used for emergencies like gunshots or strokes or car accidents, whatever,
Yes.
and people going there because they have a fever, or because they have a pain in their side, or because their knee hurts or whatever, was really striking, and really I felt emblematic of one of the problems in our healthcare system that maybe a lot of people didn't fully understand, or didn't really know what it looked like in an intimate, immersive way. And so we wanted to bring the audience in a very sort of immersive and natural way into that environment.
Right. People hear a lot about Highland, but it's to actually see it, almost like you're firsthand there. Now let's just talk about some of the folks, the patients who were there. The little girl. I think that scene with her and her dad and that's just a tearjerker right there.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things about Highland is that it's the institution of last resort for an entire community. Now, children, you can go to Children's Hospital. You can.
Yes.
They are covered. The children are not, uninsured, but oftentimes Highland is the closest place.
Right.
It's the hospital that the community knows about. They have remarkable cultural resources. That they have interpreters who can deal with people who speak in different languages.
And you show that in the film too.
Right. And so, in this girl's case, that they couldn't find her Medi-Cal card or something, and she was sick. She had a high fever, and they just needed to get her seen, and so they went to Highland. Yeah. And that to us that was just symbolic of the wide diversity of people who come into the waiting room. It's not just the indigent, the drug addicted, the homeless, the mentally ill. That's certainly there, but it's also families, who are working every day, who have just lost their jobs, who have children, who have who have all kinds of different situations that we all go through at some point in our lives.
Yes, so true, so true. Now let's talk about some of the heroes that I would consider heroes. I mean, there's Dr. Steve, I think, or the main doctor you're focusing.
Doug White.
Doug White, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Steve Swift was actually the nurse. That's why he threw me off.
Okay.
But Doug White, he's a resident, and he what a lot of people don't realize, and what you don't totally get from the film, is that Highland, and a lot of public hospitals, they attract some of the best medical students in the country, and Highland has one of the highest match rates, which means when you're coming out of Harvard or Stanford or Yale or whatever, and you're selecting where you want to go to do your residency, Highland is way on the top of the list. And so, but they're fresh faced. A lot of them who come from different cultural backgrounds than the patient population at Highland, and so we wanted to show that juxtaposition, and what it was like through the eyes of someone who was relatively new to East Oakland, basically.
Oh yeah, theory and now practice. Now you're thrown in the pool, start swimming.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and they're very capable, and and that was another surprise, is like how, and some of them stay. Some of those attendings, who end up staying there, they're the ones who stay. They choose to be there, and something happens, and you grow up. You become a doctor during your residency, and to become a doctor at a place like Highland, it just changes you. And so we wanted to show a little bit of that process through their eyes.
Right, you did, and I think there was one other scene in there where there was a young man there, and I believe it was a motor vehicle, or GSW, something like that, and of course Highland. I'm not going to say anything about it, but it was one doctor was his first time, and to see him go through that, and to see the team or one of the guys talk to him, look, man, you're going to be okay. This happens.
It was the first time he had lost a patient.
Yes.
And it just happened to be a 15-year-old gunshot victim.
Yeah.
And just that process of working that out emotionally, of how you feel about that, but also just the nuts and bolts of what do you do? You have somebody to tell, you have a family to tell. What do you tell them? What words do you use? Just that. And I don't think we realized until afterwards, when we got into the edit room, the poignancy and the impact of that little moment. But it was profound, and that one has, I think, one of the strongest impact. It definitely had the
I was
strongest
going to
impact
ask you that.
on
How
me.
did that affect you?
It is devastating. It's
Yeah.
devastating,
Mhm.
and because it's one thing, sort of reading about violence in our communities, or
Yes.
it's another driving by a crime scene or whatever,
Mhm.
and it's a whole nother seeing it up close, and the perspective of it through this young doctor's eyes was really
Mhm.
striking,
Yeah.
and you could see him working through his head
Yes.
how he was going to tell the parents,
Mm-hmm.
and we felt we didn't need to show that. Like all
Right.
you really needed to see was what we showed,
Right.
but it was just as powerful, because
Yes,
you
it was.
got sort of the essence of the challenges that they're facing on day to day.
Yeah.
And it extends well beyond just keeping the flow of beds moving
Mhm.
and all that, and it tells the story of the entire community that Highland serves. Their problems go well beyond
Oh,
healthcare.
yes. Yes.
and
Yeah.
and that was another sort of point of
Mhm.
the film.
Okay. And also one of the joys that we call, I guess, the certified nurse assistant.
Oh,
First line of defense. Tell us about Cynthia Johnson, or CJ.
CJ. I mean, she's really the star of the film, and I
Mhm.
mean, she's a symbol, I think, for what we all want our healthcare system to be more like.
Yeah.
She's the caregiver that you want,
Mm-hmm.
and when we met her, it was immediately clear that she had to be in the film, and she had to represent Highland, because Highland. I mean, I think Highland gets a bad rap.
Hey, yes.
It's true. You go in there, you have to wait.
Right.
It's true. It's in East Oakland. It's not in the best part of town.
Right, because they can't turn down anyone.
That's right.
No, everybody comes. That's the way it is.
That's right.
So-
But Highland is much richer than that, and
Mhm.
much more three-dimensional than the way it's been portrayed in the media over the years.
Right.
I think they've struggled with that, and
Mhm.
I'm not going to blame the media necessarily, but it's like it's
Right.
low-hanging fruit. When somebody's
Yes.
shot, that's the story.
Right, that's it.
But what we saw in CJ
Mm-hmm.
was that other side of the story. That was about the compassion and about the humanity,
Yes.
not just of the caregivers, but also of the community. That this is a community that's had a relationship with this hospital for generations.
Yes.
And what's not in the film, which you can't
Mhm.
pick up from the film, is that CJ was born at this hospital,
Isn't that something?
and she knows
Wow.
people. When she's triaging people, she's triaging her neighbors, her friends,
Mhm.
her relatives,
Yeah.
and for a lot of, not necessarily the residents
Right.
and the attendings, but for a lot of the nursing staff and the clerks and the admin folks, they're from that community.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to capture that, and part of our intent there was to remind people that community is a part of health. I mean, our health is to a large degree determined by the strength of our communities.
Yes.
And so we wanted to, in a subtle way, put that message out there.
Right. There were two other poignant patients that you had. Well, one was kind of funny, and one was kind of bordered on funny, sad. The funny one was the guy with the bone spurs in his back, and they told him we're gonna hire these other folks, so we gotta cut you down for low wages, and his daughter's gonna move in with him, and he's like, holy Toledo, and he's trying to negotiate how much he has to pay.
I mean, Lawan DeVello, and I still stay in touch with him. In fact, he texted me the other day.
Is that right?
Complaining about the A's.
Yo.
But
we'll just A's come.
That'll be the next installment. We'll talk about the A's. But it's sad and tragic. I mean, it's tragic and human.
Yes.
And funny, all wrapped up in one. And he represents what I see at Highland a lot, which is a resiliency and a determination that's striking. And I think for a lot of people who go to Highland,
Right.
this is their life. I mean, this
Yes.
isn't something new.
Mm-hmm.
Having $80 in your pocket, and that's all you got.
Right.
This is something that they've.
Yeah.
This is the way of life, and I think you can't help but you can't just be depressed about that all the time. You got to also be human, and so I think the way he was sort of in bargaining with himself to try and decide how he felt, and then that scene with the when he's sitting in there with the financial counselor, you could see we kind of like held on his face, where he would be laughing one minute and then the next minute he'd be kind of like,
I remember he's like,
oh man,
he's trying to calculate. Holy Toledo.
How am I going to do? How am I going to get out of this situation? But and it's like that for a lot of the patients there, that this is just their life, and when you ain't got nothing, it's like there's nothing to hide behind.
Right.
And I think you go to the waiting room at an HMO or some private, it's not nearly as interesting.
Right.
Because
not as colorful for sure.
Not at all. and I think it's because when you don't got nothing, there's nothing that you show in true colors who you are, and it's all there, the good and the bad.
That's right.
And that's what makes Highland a special place. And I personally, as a storyteller, felt that all the discussion about the economy and about the healthcare system, we talk about the middle class and we talk about the rich people, whether we're going to tax the rich people, we talk about saving the middle class, but the poor, they get left out of that conversation.
Yes.
And but they're not any, they're some of the most interesting people I've met in my journey as a storyteller. I mean, go figure that. So it's because they're human beings who are interesting and they're us. I mean, we've all existed at different rungs of the ladder at some point, in our lives. Yeah. Because when you're born,
Right. And who knows, by a snap of a finger, you could be, okay, I'm waiting in line at Highland to be seen.
It's possible. So, that's part of, thematically what we were trying to get at is that we're all on this journey together, regardless of whether we got insurance, whether we're not, whether we're addicted to drugs, whether we're a gangster. I mean, we all have, there's something in there.
Yes.
That's worthy to share. And so that was what we tried to do.
Okay, film festivals. You were at, I think, the San Francisco International Film Festival?
Yeah, we did.
You won. Don't be bashful.
We did.
Yeah, you won. Don't be bashful. You won.
We won 2 awards. the Audience Award and the Bay Area Documentary Award. Yeah, so that was a very proud moment, I think, for the team, and also gratifying because it was local, and it's a local story. I mean, it's also national.
Right,
but a lot of people from the hospital came out to the screenings, and that was really the first time that we sort of collectively shared the experience of the film, with the community and with the people at the hospital and with our filmmaking team, and so it was really special.
Okay, so how are you guys feeling? I mean, you're seeing it on the big screen, and in an audience of people who might not even been interested but got there to see your film. What was it like for you and your team?
I mean, it's personal. I mean, I think everybody maybe would give you a slightly different answer. But for me, it was very emotional because I felt like on some level people got what I was trying to share. Because it's one thing seeing something; it's a whole nother.
Yes.
Capturing that in a film, and as much as we tried to step back, in the film and let the stories be who they want to be, and let the people be who they want to be. You have to edit it, and you have to make choices, and you have to craft it. So we weren't sure how people were going to react to it, how the hospital was going to react to it. They're going to feel like, people, they're talking about how the wait is long and all these other things, that they're going to get the nuances of it, and to see people respond to it emotionally, and to see people understand what we were trying to do was very emotional and very gratifying, just from a purely artistic point of view. From a personal side, it was really remarkable because my wife works there, and I've had an intimate view of this place for many years, and I feel it's something that they're going to be proud of, and if they're proud of it, then I feel like I did my job.
I think they're going to be proud of it. I really do. Everyone, we've just been hanging out with director extraordinaire Peter Nix for the new film, The Waiting Room. Now, we'll probably edit this part out, but is it going to be red carpet when it's open and open? It's gonna be
I don't know where do you get the red carpet? Where do you rent the red carpet?
Dude,
they had a red carpet. They had the residents after the San Francisco festival. One of the residents has an apartment near here, and they actually had a red carpet outside their apartment for the after party. Yes. So we can get a red carpet.
Or you know what? I just shot a fashion show, and red construction paper. Who's gonna know?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, who's gonna know?
That's it.
Peter Nix.
All right.
Man, thank you for this film, man.
All right.
This is a great waiting room.
All right.